Absolutely. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me. It's great to see everybody here today. My name is Natalie Harder. I'm the supervisor in education and training at the Toronto Region Conservation Authority, and really excited to be here and chat with you. I was chatting a little bit with Dash about what I wanted to share today and what I thought might be of interest. And I decided to go with a little bit of a story time about myself and my career path, because it was a little bit, I think, compared to some of my colleagues, a little bit unusual, the way I got into the role the way that I did. And I think about it often, how there's a few key moments throughout that time that really sort of defined my career path and where I got to. And I'm really grateful for a lot of them. So I thought I'd just go through that and sort of pull out some of those key elements that I think might be useful to you. And then you guys can ask me questions. Feel free to interrupt or let me know if you want any more details or if I've missed something at any time. All right, I'm just going to change into gallery view, see you guys a bit better. All right, so like I said, I'm a supervisor at the Toronto Region Conservation Authority. So I work with the Claremont Nature Centre, which is an outdoor education center at in Pickering, Ontario. And there we do overnight school programs, also day programs. And what I was just chatting with Dash and Zara about is summer camp programs and other recreational family programs. I also support our York and Durham education teams, so our community learning teams that do our education for children all the way to adults in the community, or these days virtually, but for the community. As well as our outreach education program. So those are our three programs that we offer to schools, sort of promoting the environmental education work that we do at the TRCA. So basically my career started out with, as I'm sure many of you, is when I was going to university and trying to decide what it was that I was going to study. And I actually started my university career at the Ontario College of Art and Design. So it was a college experience. It was fully focused on art, and I did that for a year. And during that time, realized it wasn't the right fit for me. I was aware of the paths that were available from that experience. And I was having just a really hard time seeing myself in any of those. So I made the decision at the time, which was challenging, but it was to leave that program and start basically from scratch, a new experience at the University of Toronto in a joint program with Sheridan College. So I still really loved art and I didn't want to let go of that, but I knew I also wanted that that university experience and to get just a little bit more of a breadth of knowledge. So I did that, and I was able to get a degree from University of Toronto and a diploma from Sheridan College from that experience. So that was really exciting. After that, I did my Bachelor's of Education with U of T as well, because I was really interested in working with children and I sort of just wanted to explore that a little bit more. Just one moment. Sorry, I just needed to address one quick thing and I will be back in 1 minute.
No problem.
Take your time, no problem. So the TRCA has multiple field centers. Natalie's a supervisor over at CNC Claremont Nature Center. I used to work as the superintendent, which is under the supervisor. So I used to work under the supervisor at another TRCA field center, which was Albion Hills. So the Albion Hills field center, and that was an incredible experience. The field centers do amazing work, and it was really a pleasure to be involved. And that was my previous role before this.
Okay, Natalie.
Thanks. Sorry about that. My husband decided to blast some music while he was it was very distracting. So I think I had ended with bachelor's of education. So throughout my time in university, I had been seeking out employment, particularly in the summers, and I remember finding a really challenging time looking for employment. I couldn't find anything. I couldn't find anything in the retail sector. I remember applying for jobs at Dollarama and they didn't call me back. And so I decided I'm going to volunteer. It felt very fortunate. You know, my parents were able to support me through that summer. So I went to a local museum and asked to volunteer, and they actually ended up saying, hey, there's this job opportunity, and interviewing me on the spot for that job opportunity. And I ended up working doing children's programming at an art museum for the summer. And that was a really pivotal moment for me. Number one, deciding to spend my time volunteering in the areas that I was interested in. And number two, getting that work experience in something that was really connected to what I was interested in. So from that point on, my summers, I really focused on trying to find those types of opportunities. They weren't the best paying opportunities, but they gave me a chance to get my hands in a lot of different neat projects. So I worked as in a library as a children's programmer. I worked in a few different museums as a children's programmer. Worked at the Bata Shoe Museum, which was a very interesting experience. Wasn't aware there was a whole museum about shoes, but there is. And I worked in outdoor education at the Toronto Botanical Garden. And so if you can see, there was a thread going through those, which was working with children in an educational setting. So as I was going through university and studying my English and art, in the summer, I'm like, I want to do what I want to do. And that is what I was drawn to, is working with kids, working with them in an educational setting, and maybe not necessarily in a school, in these areas where you could really explore sort of one passion and one interest. So that is what ended up leading me to go to Teachers College. I didn't go with the express focus of teaching in a school. And as I went through my Teachers College, it became more and more clear that I was interested in educating kids, but not necessarily in a typical school environment. So when I graduated Teachers College, I saw a job opening at the Toronto Botanical Garden, a full-time job as a coordinator working in, with the education programs. And I applied, and after I had gotten the job and was successful, they said, oh, you know, one of the reasons that you got the job was because you did that summer camp counselor job the summer before, and we remembered how great you were and how hard you worked and how seriously you took the job. And so, you know, we had that experience with you. So that was really reassuring to know that those experiences, you know, putting that extra work and that extra effort into those jobs that, you know, they might not seem on the surface to be, you know, the most significant roles, is that people remember them and they'll remember you. So I was really thrilled. That job was so much fun. I got to play in the dirt with kids all day. I got to develop programs. And one of the really nice things about working in a smaller organization was about 15 full-time staff at the Toronto Botanical Gardens is that you get a lot of autonomy. People let you kind of run with it. As a coordinator, I got to oversee staff. I got to hire staff. After a few years, I got the supervisor job. And so there I got to oversee the budgets. and make decisions and grow the programs. So that was a really important role for me, because not only did I get to do the job that I wanted to do, working in education, working with children, but I got to dip my hands in some things like that budget pieces, like writing grants, like staff management. So I got to start working on those pieces very early in my career, which was really exciting. And I can see now that really helped with my next career steps. So at the TBG, I was there for 5 years. My boss, when I was there, actually encouraged me to apply for a job as the executive director at the High Park Nature Center. She was wonderful, very supportive. She was really an important mentor for me. And so that's another sort of those pivotal moments is developing those relationships with your mentors and listening to them, because they often can see things in you that you might not be able to see. I wouldn't have applied for that job if she hadn't said, you need to apply for this job, you can do it. I just saw that title and the role and the responsibilities and thought, not me, not yet. But she encouraged me to do that, and I ended up being successful in the role. And so then I was working at the High Park Nature Center, which was a tiny organization. So I thought the Toronto Botanical Garden was small with 15 full-time staff. The High Park Nature Center had 4 full-time staff. So it was very small, but in terms of the experience, it was huge, because then I got to get a chance to really lead an organization. So all of those other skills that I had developed in budget management, grant applications, all of those pieces really helped in that next step. And in that job, I was very fortunate that there were a number of opportunities that came from it. So there was an opportunity to move to a larger space in the park, which involved working with park partners, including the City of Toronto, applying for grants to be able to support the move, and actually supporting a garden development in High Park, which is pretty significant, because that's something that it doesn't happen all that often. So I was able to support a large project called Our Space, which is an outdoor urban recreation space. So what that was looking at some of the sensitive areas in High Park, the plants that were there, particularly in the areas that they didn't want the public to go in, and then planting a garden that had those plants as a demonstration, so that the public could learn about those really important sensitive areas without actually having to go into the sensitive areas in the park. So that got a lot of support from the Natural Environment Committee at the City of Toronto, the Parks Department at the City of Toronto, and for some of the park partners that are really vocal and involved in High Park, like their Natural Environment Group. So those were really excited, and that all happened really fast within about 2 years. And then at that time, I saw the opportunity for the supervisor at the TRCA. So TRCA is a much bigger organization. I actually don't know off the top of my head, but I think around 700 full-time staff. Dashers are, you might have a better
500
number.
around.
Around
Full time,
yeah. So much bigger. But obviously that role was a little bit different, sort of going back to a supervisor role, but providing an entirely different set of experiences. So I got a lot of chance to really work independently and autonomously, lead the team, develop those programs. But within the TRCA, I get a chance to work with a variety of different teams, connect with other groups that are doing similar work that you are. And there are also other benefits to working with a larger organization. There's a little bit more job security, and those types of things are really important as well. So that's what brought me to the TRCA. in terms of opportunities, it also allowed me to do some other exciting things. My boss, who is now back in her role, but she went on a secondment to York Region. And I was able to step into her role for a few years and get a chance to see the experience from a senior manager role, which then let me step back and see the organization from another lens and learn about some of the more strategic planning that goes on in that role, which again really helps. I'm back in my supervisor role, but gave me the experience to understand what that role was like. So it supports in my current role because I know how to best support the greater mission and vision of the education and training department at the TRCA, but it also gives me that experience to put in my back pocket for my next career step. So that is sort of the not so short, long, short version of how I ended up where I did. Like I said, there is a couple of sort of key elements that I think about when I think about my career path. One of them is taking those opportunities, job opportunities, if you're able, that might not be the best paying opportunities, but give you the opportunity to get a chance to do really creative, interesting work. So even back to those summer jobs, I often looked for Canada summer jobs because those are funded positions. And part of the grant is that they need to have meaningful work experience in them. So I would often look for those types of summer jobs because I knew that they had some sort of element of career development or career growth built into them. So even at an early stage in my career, starting to build and pool those resources and tools. The other main piece, I think, is that mentorship piece and developing those relationships with people that you're working with or colleagues in other organizations and listening to them and trusting them when they give you feedback about what you're doing, you know, both good and bad. And then the other main area is collecting as much information and experience as you can. So, you know, early in my career, I would often go out and seek out opportunities and ask if we could do something new. When we had programs at the TBG running for the morning, I asked, can't we do afternoon programs too? So taking that extra step, that initiative to bring more to the organization as often as you can, because those are the types of things that helped grow me and help support my career path. So sorry, that was a lot of talking.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, thank you so much. It's a great story, actually. And that is the reason when you said, when I invited you, you said, yes, I was very happy because I wanted your story. Like, it tells actually lots about how to get in the environmental field and how to use those small opportunities, volunteering, internship, and how to get the experience. And sometimes, yeah, you don't have to have like a real like degree right away from teaching to go in the environmental field. Mm-hmm. It is great, actually.
Absolutely. Thanks, Ash.
Yeah, that was lovely, Natalie. Thank you. And what about the wider field of environmental education and the opportunities in there for the students? Do you have, besides the advice that you've already given about, you know, about putting in time volunteering and taking the positions that you can which lead to greater opportunities? Do you have any other words of wisdom for getting into the field and the opportunities there?
Like specifically in environmental education?
Yeah.
Yeah, so definitely in my experience, getting any experiences in that environmental education area, it doesn't necessarily need to be exactly connected to what you're thinking you might want to do. So from my perspective, it came from a very educational perspective. So I was education first, and then I sort of built that environmental piece into it. So I developed my career in environmental education that way, but some of the staff that we bring in, and when I'm going through resumes, I'm looking for staff to bring in, some staff come in the other way. They're maybe looking at environmental technologists, but they really have a passion for educating on top of it. And so it doesn't need to always be environmental education. If you're interested and passionate in the environment and you're doing something related to that, and then you can build out the education piece by volunteering, teaching skating or volunteering somewhere else. When somebody is looking at a resume for that, they're going to be able to put those things together if what your ultimate goal is working in environmental education. So you can sort of take the different pieces of what you're interested in and put them together and ultimately, hopefully, get that role that melts them together really beautifully.
That's awesome. Thanks very much. Did you guys have, sorry, Josh, were you going to say something?
I just wanted to ask people like for question now that it's a good opportunity like to chat and to ask question and clarification and, and get more information.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm just going to look at my notes while you guys are writing questions, because I had some things I wanted to mention. I want to make sure I captured them all.
Sure. We have a question from Marcella here. So Marcella asks, do you have any advice on specific organizations to volunteer with that will help me gain experience in environmental education?
Oh, that's a great question. Honestly, I think any organization you can volunteer with is going to provide that support. But and I think I sort of mentioned this throughout, there is this real benefit to looking at a smaller organization first, because smaller organizations, in my experience, are a little bit more nimble and they have the capacity to build in their volunteer experience in a way that works more directly with you. So for instance, at the High Park Nature Center, we would have a variety of volunteers, and if one volunteer showed a particular interest in one area, they were really interested in bats or something like that, then we could really work with them and say, oh, hey, this person, do you want to work on the bat project with us? You can do X and Y and Z and help build out that experience with them. So there's something really nice about working with those smaller organizations, because they can often be a little bit more flexible with what their volunteers are doing. Having said that, an organization like the TRCA with a volunteer program has an extensive training period. So you get a lot of education from that and a lot of learning from that experience too. So there's definitely benefits to both. It's really what you're interested in getting out of it. So for instance, the Toronto Botanical Garden, the High Park Nature Center are great places to volunteer with. Right now, it's a little bit harder because that's a lot of in-person, but there are other organizations that are working a little bit more virtually. You could look at like the Nature Conservancy of Canada or other organizations like that and see if there's any ways to support virtually or in person when they're starting to do, when and if they do in-person programs again.
It might be wrong actually, but I have the perception that most of not-for-profit small organizations actually operate in the environmental field and in environmental education because it's more need and there are more funding. This is my perception. Like Los, if you go and see all the non-for-profit organizations in GTA, most of them operates in the environmental education field.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Small organization for park and groups and environmental education organization here and there. And this is that is a good place to start getting some experience as a volunteer or very short contract. That might be great too.
Yeah, and the nice thing about volunteering is everybody loves a volunteer. So you can really be a little bit more picky in finding the organization that you really want to learn about and you really want to work with. So in my experience, I was looking for my jobs in the retail sector, nothing I was passionate about. Well, if I'm going to volunteer, I'm going to go exactly to what I want to do, and that's education, and that was art. And so I got the chance to get that volunteer that turned into work experience and something that was exactly what I wanted. So that's what I would suggest if you're looking for a volunteer is, you get to be a little bit more picky in that experience. So find the organization that you're really excited about.
And for you guys, it's been a really good time to get into the sector, because last year 2020 and going forward, the increased grant funding that's been available to organizations like the TRCA and other environmental organizations means there's a lot more entry points to get into this field. Some of them are paid and some are volunteer opportunities, but there are more chances to get your foot in the door and then and then follow your own career pathway than in previous years. So it's a good time to be getting into the sector, absolutely. And then Natalie, you also experienced with things like citizen science and enrolling in projects that are offered online, like the Water Rangers, for example. Is that experience you think would be beneficial to students looking for job roles? It's experience to put on an application, but for the students it's not a competitive process, and you're still getting work doing experience doing field work, which can then translate to increased opportunities.
Yeah, I think that's another great approach, right? Is finding those ways to connect and showcase your passion and your enthusiasm through something like engaging in a citizen science or a volunteer opportunity. One of the things that I think is really important with the volunteer opportunities, or even if it's a summer job that is just a short-term contract, but it's in your field, is just doing those jobs with as much enthusiasm and passion, and really putting your all into it. Because if you can go into those jobs and it's, again, from my experience, a summer camp counselor job, and knock it out of the park, then people are going to remember that. And so even if it doesn't turn into another job at that organization, it turns into a great reference. So whatever you're doing, if you do decide to volunteer, or you do decide to take those other roles, is put your everything into it, because or else you don't get the value of them. You're not going to get the value out of it unless you really go into it with your full heart. And it's so much easier to do that when it's actually something you're excited about.
It's true. It's 100%. Like, I remember when I started with TRCA, I worked with the pay program 3 months only, and my contract was done. And after almost 9 months, admin position came up with a pay, with a new program, but similar like pay. And I applied for that, and I want to come back what you said. The people remember you. These are the way. Summer jobs are great opportunity, like to get some experience, and to build your resume.
Mm-hmm. And they're great opportunities to trial out what you are interested in and what you're not. You get the chance to really be on the ground and see what that work is like. Learn about the supervisors that you're working with and what their job looks like. If that's your ultimate goal, then it's good to know what that job actually is. And if you still feel as excited about it, one of the reasons I started with mentioning my first sort of step at Ontario College of Art and Design is because I think it's really important, if you find yourself not feeling passionate about something, is step back. There's no shame in it. You didn't know until you got a chance to give it a try. Because if you aren't feeling it, especially in the organizations that we're in, because they are competitive, because they're fun and they're exciting and they're great jobs to be in. So if you're not feeling like it's the right fit, or you need to pivot or rethink, then it's important to always do that. And getting the chance to see what those jobs are on the ground, that's really important to that whole process.
Absolutely, and I learned that lesson personally, because when I joined the TRCA, I was working for myself. So I had a company when I joined the TRCA, which was going well. It was quite a profitable company, and you know, several months into the work, I realized that I liked working for the TRCA more than I liked working for myself. So I sold the business. I sold the company. I changed trajectory. Initially, I thought entrepreneurship was the something that would make me happy in my professional life, and it turned out that it wasn't. And you very quickly figure out that it's not about it's really not about the compensation. It's not about the money. It's about enjoying what you do, and I very much enjoy what I do now. So I did take that big step, and I did change the trajectory of my career path. So that's absolutely something to consider. If you guys have any questions, please pop them in the chat. Don't be shy. Oh, Nurlan has his hand up.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Nurlan.
Hi, Natalie and Zar and everyone. Thanks for presentation. It was really nice and inspiring. My question was like in general about environmental education. In TRCA, do you focus on specific like a target group of people, like for children, or it's in general raising awareness on environmental issues, or on working with wide variety of groups? How is it happening? Just curious to know.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it's one of the reasons I really love working for the TRCA, because TRCA does so many things. We have our hands in every part of the environmental sector. So there's actually different groups, it's not always the same group, but there's different groups that are working with different sectors in different capacities. So we have, for instance, a number of different teams that work more specifically in sort of children's education, educating through schools. Really the focus is on building a sustainable community, starting with children, right? So getting their buy-in, really connecting them with nature right from the start. So that's sort of school programs, our camps. We also work, have a whole area where we work closely with the community. So for instance, low impact design, and helping people install rain barrels, helping them learn how to develop a rain garden at their home, helping them understand ways that they can take their lawn from a sod lawn into something that's more environmentally friendly. So there's that whole area, which is still, our environmental education, but it's focusing more on adults, it's focusing more on actions that they can have. We have a whole section that works with industries, Partners in Project Green, that works in educating industries on what they can do and how they can support. We have a whole section, our Sustainable Neighborhoods program, that works again with the community, but in understanding how they can support retrofit and action programs in their community, not just in their home. So there's so many ways that you can look at it, and the TRCA has a variety. So it's good to always look at that and think about, what part of it is really exciting and interesting to you. And then, see if you can narrow in on finding those experiences. But the environmental education sector, it goes from preschool all the way up to sort of industry for us.
Yeah, there's some people that are expert like in energy side. They are like they great expert in that field, less let's say skills on education side, but they are expert on that field. They're working educating people and teaching people and how to improve their homes. And
that's where the education piece comes in. If you have that experience in connecting the environment and education, if you're looking at jobs that are then, trying to help businesses learn how to better, adapt their practices, that education is going to come out because you are educating people in how they can do that. You're encouraging them. You're trying to help them figure out what next steps are. So it all really comes together. Education is such an important part of the environmental sector.
Ferry's got her hand up. Ferry?
Hi, Natalie. I have a question. So if we talk about within TRCA, what kind of positions are available in the environmental education? Like, can you give me an idea, give me some names of the kinds of positions that are related to this?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll sort of start from most entry level to, ones that require a little bit more experience. So we would have entry level positions, for instance, in my team. And these are the jobs that I did when I started in my career, is those summer camp counselor jobs. So that's a great way to just experience the organization. And I have had camp counselors that have been so excellent that you keep them in mind, and that when there's other jobs that open up, you remember them. Right. We also have sort of technologist positions and roles like that are also more entry level, that are a great way to get to see a side of the organization. Then I would say we have some assistant level positions that come out. So those are great opportunities because obviously as an assistant, you are working really closely with another staff member. So you get a chance to learn and support on the programs. So for instance, I have an education assistant position in York and Durham posted right now. That is a short-term contract position, but that is really supporting in our environmental programs in York and Durham. So you'd be working really closely with a number of different staff on a number of different projects. So it gives a chance to get into a number of different projects and really learn from your teammates. So there's assistant level positions. There's a whole team of coordinator level positions. So those are actually a lot more independent. You're still working with a team, but definitely have your own work plan that you're working through and you're guiding. So for instance, our coordinator level staff that I work with at the TRCA will, support on overseeing budgets. They'll help develop the work plans. They'll work with partners. So there's a lot of great experience that you get at that level. And then there's project manager roles that we have within the teams as well, which are then quite self-directed. And then we have our supervisors and managers, and sort of goes up from there. Zara and Dash, you might be able to pipe in if there is.
Yeah. You are right. Yeah, I think like those positions like admins or assistant working with those teams actually are very good because you get more experience than working like in specific tasks actually, and you learn more about environmental education. And in addition, I think other departments at the RCA offer some kind of, or do some kind of job related to the environmental education, because they have lots of events and, and tree planting and stuff like that. And just in some way, these events are related with environmental education too, because they want to promote and educate and like invite people to work on environmental side.
I have one more question for the positions that are advertised right now, for example, education assistant. And it's, I think, a short-term position for about 3 months to 6 months. So like, how are these working right now? Is it virtually working, or do you have to is it in person because right now currently I'm stuck in India. So if I apply for that position, so I'll only be able to work online or virtually right now. So if I apply for that short-term position, so that's.
Yes. So that's a really good point. Definitely some of the positions that are being posted are fully virtually. The one that I specifically mentioned does have some on-site components. So the candidate would need to be based out of Ontario. So that is something to look for, and always inquire. You can always go and seek out additional information if you're looking at something like that and you look at the job description and it says virtual, 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 and you say, hey, I think that I could do this from India, is reach out and inquire, because it might be a possibility to do that, especially on a short-term contract. But that organization, HR department likely would need to share that information.
All right. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Sorry, we have a question from Annie, and then we'll go to Gino and Ifra. So Annie asks, for reaching out to environmental organizations or volunteer opportunities or to connect, what's the best way to get in touch with them before knowing anyone in the organization? I'm thinking about email, LinkedIn messaging, or through the website contacts.
That's a great question. From my experience, if you can find any contact information, a name, that's the best way to reach out. I mean, the wonderful thing about when you are seeking out volunteer opportunities or ways you can support is nobody's upset about that. Everyone loves to hear about that. And if they don't have any at the organization at the time, they'll let you know, and no harm done. So if there's any way you can find a name, even if you think to yourself, oh, this isn't going to be the person, they'll be able to direct you. So just, being aware of that and say, I'm really excited. I'm excited about the work that you're doing. I'm interested in volunteer opportunities. I found your name. I'm not sure if you're the right person, but if you're able to help me direct me to that person, that's, I think, the best way to go through it. The LinkedIn depends a little bit more on the individuals that are in the organization. So that can be a great way. But I found that there's a high degree of variability in how engaged people are on LinkedIn. So you might send something and not hear back, and it's just because that person's not particularly engaged in that, and not because they're not interested in, where a website contact to their work email is likely to get in front of their eyes. And website contact page can be great. It can get lost though in the fray too. So I would say that would be like my top would be finding a name rather than like an info at. That would be the top way. And then next would be going through your website on contact info, and then LinkedIn, especially if you find somebody that's active on it.
Yeah,
great answer.
That's
Thank
great.
you,
That's a
Natalie.
great answer. Yeah, and I think, yes, LinkedIn is for short messages, because I don't think people will explain everything on LinkedIn, but on emails and phones, it's great. And leave the website the last resource, and probably people that you contact through email or phone might direct you through the website.
Yeah. And if you're
to send the application and stuff.
If you're emailing someone and you've taken 10, 15 minutes to read about what the organization does or a particularly exciting program, even better, right? Because then you can say, I saw this, I thought that was really cool. I was wondering if I could be more involved. It just shows that you really are interested in the work that the organization is doing.
But yeah, sure, if you cannot use the previous one, go with the website too.
And he says, thank you very much. Gino, would you like to unmute?
Yes, of course. Thanks. First of all, thank you, Natalie, for your presentation. Your story is definitely very inspiring, especially for me who's interested in environmental education as well. But my question, in the context of thinking about prospective references for future jobs or making an impression, what are your tips in maintaining a good relationship with an organization you're volunteering with? Of course, aside from doing what is expected from the volunteer position.
That is a really good question. So I would say, doing what is expected obviously is what you want to do. The next thing would be to just ask where you can help. It's not that complicated, but it really does help out because sometimes when you have somebody that's coordinating volunteers, they can get a little bit in the head of what they're doing. And so somebody coming in and just saying, hey, I'd love to help out where I can, helps as well. But I would say the most important thing is just attitude and enthusiasm. So if you're going in and helping on a tree planting day, just going in with a big smile, asking again, what you can do, paying attention to what other people are doing. Oh, I can see the volunteer coordinator is over there moving the buckets. I'm just going to go over there and see if I can help move the buckets. Those types of things are probably the most important, because if you are enthusiastic and happy to be there, then people know that you'll be excited about any work that comes up, and it tells them a little bit more about how interested you really are in the work, and that's so critical. So I would say generally is that enthusiasm, and then otherwise is just reminding them that you're here and excited to help.
And I'm sure Natalie can speak to this much better than I can, because Natalie has done much more hiring. But in my experience hiring at the TRCA, when I've called references in the past, I often get someone, a volunteer coordinator who goes, that person volunteered under me 4 years ago. I kind of recognize the name, but let me check. So keeping up a relationship. Keeping up a relationship. All the references that I currently have, I talk to at least on a monthly basis, at least. So maintaining some sort of relationship with those volunteer coordinators, so that they will remember you, they know who you are, and they remember the excellent work that you've done.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And I'm also asking the question because I'll be starting a volunteer position at TRCA actually this summer.
That's good.
At Tommy Thompson Park. So I think we also still have more volunteer positions open. So for anybody interested in this industry, I highly recommend, because I'm pretty sure there are still some positions open.
Good luck. And with that, at Tommy Thompson, it's a great place actually.
Amazing place.
You'll learn a lot. Yeah. Good opportunity.
Place.
Show that you love what you are going to do there.
So that, I think, Gino, was a great example of something that you can do. So mentioning the volunteer experience, take that extra step to say, I think there's some extra spots. Shout out to everyone. Like, that's the type of thing that somebody would notice as that initiative, that somebody is excited about the role and excited enough to help share it with another community. So well played.
Absolutely. Excellent, Gino. Ifra?
Hi, Natalie.
Hey, Ifra.
Hi, everyone. My question for Natalie was for somebody who doesn't have any experience in education, and they were trying to go into environmental education. Like, what are the challenges they should expect and things they can improve on in that sector?
So somebody that doesn't have that experience in the environmental education, but is interested in developing and working in that area.
Yeah.
So I would say there's lots of roles that have education built into them, but are not primarily an education focused role. So there are opportunities that I mentioned with our Sustainable Neighborhood Action Plan, where they are more heavily involved in coordinating projects, developing work plans, working with the community, but that education aspect is certainly built in and helps support the role. So opportunities like that might give you the chance to build those skills while the majority of the work is focused in something that you might have more experience in and be stronger in. And then often they'll have, teams will find somebody who is excited to go out into the community and wants to talk to them and wants to share and wants to educate, and you get sort of pushed into the forefront to help educate the community, so you can sort of put your hand up for those opportunities that help build out those skills. And that's in addition to, opportunities that we've already talked about, like volunteering and things like that. When I'm looking at references, or resumes, if I see somebody that has a strong environmental background and then their experience in education is in volunteer experience, that's equally as relevant, right? I know that they're interested and excited about it and can blend those skills. So there's a couple different ways to start to develop those if education isn't sort of your main focus.
Yeah, okay, thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. And Maria, would you like to unmute?
Yeah, thanks. So I have a question. For a full-time student at a university, are there any projects-based job positions that are part-time, like that can be done simultaneously? And what sort of positions are those?
At the TRCA specifically, or just in general?
In general, yeah.
Yeah, I think that those are probably a little bit trickier to come by, but they're certainly out there. One of the nice opportunities, actually, I find if you do want to do something, but you're not looking for a full-time opportunity right now, is look at those part-time jobs. They're often great experience. But there might not be the funding or capacity or need for a full-time role. And so if you can sort of swoop in and do a great job in those part-time roles, then
Right.
those are really, really good opportunities. There are some part-time roles that can also be very flexible, and that's a good thing to ask. I've certainly myself posted for part-time roles that are quite rigid and need to be at this time and this time. We need you to have this flexibility. But there's also been roles that are like, well, if somebody wants to come in and do 4 hours a day, 5 days a week, or somebody that wants to come and do Saturday plus Monday and Tuesday, we can work with that based on what works best for the program. So those are good ones to look at, because there might be some capacity to build it in a way that works for you.
Right, thanks. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Natalie. Thanks, Maria. Cedric.
Okay, so first of all, thank you for sharing your message earlier, Natalie. Environmental education is a field that I'm also interested in. So I just want to build up on a topic earlier mentioned. So just looking at the other side of things, what can you say about the advantages of someone with experience in the environmental education or education in general? Like me, myself, I do have some training experience in a customer service setting as well as in a university setting. So during hiring, I'm not sure how involved you are in hiring process interviews. Is it that much of an advantage if there is some background experience in teaching, instruction, mentoring, or like training?
Yeah, so it definitely, it can be different for every role. So I always say, put yourself out there, put your best foot forward. And if it isn't the right fit, it's not necessarily getting discouraged, because you might not know everything that's going on in the background for that role and exactly what they're looking for. But I find for a lot of roles in environmental education that experience in education in any sort of capacity is looked at favorably, and it does sort of showcase the capacity to take information, synthesize it and share it with somebody who might not know about it. And that can happen in so many different ways, in so many different contexts. So it's important to showcase any of those opportunities or experiences rather that you have within education. So I definitely find it's advantageous. For me, there are different roles where, something like that for maybe our community learning team, that would feel like a really good fit. Whereas for educating with children, maybe we're looking for somebody who's worked, their experience is more in a elementary or secondary school setting, or, has gone to or is interested in going to teachers college. So it sort of depends on the role and what they're looking for exactly, but certainly I think that's an advantage in almost all cases.
But customer service skills is good for everyone working in the environmental field, because in environmental field, you have to deal with people. That is a set, actually.
Yeah, absolutely.
Almost every position in this field, one of the in the applications customer services
exactly
is
number
listed
one,
from
It's
from
important.
education to enforcement. It's absolutely. Isabel asks, are there any positions in environmental education, not in teaching, but related to creating and managing projects for environmental education? And if so, what are some entry-level positions for that?
So certainly there are. Like I said, education is a really important part of many different areas at the TRCA specifically, within the education and training division and outside of the education and training division. So there are other groups where working with the public, working with connecting with communities is a part of the role. So, sorry, was that in the chat? Just wanted to.
Yes, that was in the chat. I can repeat that for you.
Okay, great.
Sure. It's
creating and managing projects with environmental.
Oh yeah.
Yes. So entry-level positions. So for those types of project management focused jobs, I would say at the TRCA specifically, the entry level would be sort of an assistant level role, getting the chance to support on those projects. And, in my experience, what I've seen is, although an assistant level role gives you the opportunity to have some really direct support, it has lots of opportunities to get in and do a lot of meaningful work. So it is a great role to get your foot in the door.
But yeah, there are some positions not related or looks like not related at all with environmental education. Let's say they are looking for an environmental technologist in environmental education department.
Well, when I was working at as the crew leader over at Bruce's Mill, it wasn't even in the job description, environmental education, and then but we quickly fell into the role of sort of providing curation for the park, and that was some of the history and what the two mill buildings there are. There used to be a grist mill at Bruce's Mill. What the stream that runs through there is a tributary of the Rouge, Bruce's Creek, and sort of communicating that information to the public. So it's something that's present in a lot of roles, whether that context is formal or informal.
Absolutely, and even if you think of your sort of connecting with people through social media, I mean, a lot of the work that many environmental education organizations do through social media is another way to educate people. And the folks working in those roles might be educators, but in all likelihood, they're not. They're sort of maybe working with a team of educators to get content, but then they're figuring out the best way to disseminate that information. So there's lots of interesting different angles on how you can build in that education piece if it's not necessarily an education job.
Okay, I think no more question. Looks like. Thank you so much, Natalie. We thought like 30 to 45 minutes, and it's almost 1 hour. We took lots of your time today, but thank you so much. We really appreciate everything and your story and your advices and suggestions and examples, and it is great for environmental field. And we wanted that because we already had a discussion with our clients before that, where to go and which is the best field, because they were not sure. And I think they learned something today, like, okay, like how to get, you can get in that field from education side or from environmental side.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that was great, actually.
So much for having me. And, it's so wonderful to see you all here. And, the fact that you're coming out on your Saturday to learn more and ask these amazing questions, very thoughtful. It just really showcases how ahead of the game you are. Like, I really believe that you'll end up in just the right spot for you, because clearly you're passionate and excited about it. You're taking the time to really think about what you want to do. So I'm excited to hopefully work with some of you in the future.
We hope so.
We hope
Who
so.
knows? Maybe
Thank
someone
you.
is coming there.
Absolutely.
We see some people from past, like starting working with TRCA from PAPS NIGEP.
And not just TRCA, we work with so many people from the last NIGEP cohort, because some have gone to PLT and SFI, and so and there are coordinators there, Parks Canada. So we now regularly work with members of the just graduated cohort.
Yeah, that's wonderful. One more thing I wanted to mention, because I didn't know this when I was applying for jobs, is if you find an organization you want to work for, pin their careers page, because lots of times they don't get picked up on the other
aggregators.
That is great. Yeah, that is great actually. Yeah, like.
Yeah, and sometimes the postings go up quick, and you got to have your eye on them. So if you're like, I want to work for this organization, keep it pinned and check on it weekly. That's a great way to find those jobs that, you know, might not get to every single person's eyes because they're not getting picked up on Good Work or some of the other big sites.
And even the Conservation Ontario webpage, the career page, aggregates positions for Ontario's conservation authorities, but even that doesn't catch them all. So, you know, so do be sure to look.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that is great tip actually. You need to check every week a list of websites, organizations that you are interested to work in actually, and that is a great tip for job search too. And job search is not easy. That is job search to find those positions.
No, I've posted jobs for only a week because you're on a timeline, right? So yeah, it's definitely worth keeping on it. But yeah, I just remembered that I wanted to mention that. All right.
Thank you again. Thank you so much. And
thank you, Natalie. Thank you very much.
Wonderful time. Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thanks.